From an infinite ultimate that can kill entire teams without stopping, to holograms you can shoot. DPS abilities in Marvel Rivals are extremely confusing. With over double the characters in this role than others, it's hard to know them all. But don't worry, we've compiled all of them for you. Even if you don't play DPS, I promise watching this video will make you a way better player than before watching it. Starting with Black Panther. Sitting at 300 health, his main attack, Vibranium Claws, can do 35 damage per hit, with roughly 2 hits per second. The damage honestly isn't very good, as it can take up to 8 hits to finish off the average health of a single target. But this is where his kit gets a little confusing. Black Panther's secondary fire, Spear Toss, has 2 charges, each on a 6-second cooldown, which attaches a Vibranium mark to the enemy when struck with the spear, doing 45 damage on impact from a Vibranium field. His secondary ability, Spinning Kick, allows him to dash forward at enemies, dealing 70 damage on an 8-second cooldown. Upon impact, this attaches a Vibranium mark as well. Again, with all of these Vibranium marks, you're probably confused. So here it is. The main ability that makes use of his Vibranium marks is Spirit Rend. It's a dash-like ability that does 80 damage and provides 40 bonus health upon hit. However, you only get the bonus health when you use the dash on an enemy that has a Vibranium mark. It does have an 8-second cooldown, but when you hit an enemy that has a Vibranium mark, you get it back instantly. Meaning as long as the enemy has a Vibranium mark, you can use this ability and instantly get it back while also gaining 40 bonus health. Additionally, his passive Panther's Cunning gives him an additional 20% below 100 HP. The bonus health does not build to this. And lastly, his jump ability lets you climb walls vertically, and once you detach from the wall, you get a double jump. You can probably use this to do some cheeky initiation. Black Panther's ultimate, Vast Descent, put pretty simply, is a high burst single cast attack that does damage in a straight line. Its range from him is 20 meters, with a width of about the size of the visual indicator, which is the Panther, but it's specifically stated to be 22 meters. It does 150 damage and has an energy cost of 3,300. Next, we have Black Widow, whose main weapons are a rifle and batons. You can swap between them, and her batons do 45 damage each, hitting twice per second, while her rifle is just like any old sniper rifle. You can scope in and you can shoot. With a base damage of 120, it can headshot for a max damage of up to 240. When scoped in, it seems there's no fall off distance. However, unscoped has some serious fall off, starting at 10 meters and halving entirely by 20, so it's really not worth no scoping past 10 meters. Next, her primary ability, Fleetfoot, allows her to run faster and even do a boosted power jump while sprinting. The overall movement boost is 33%, and both her jump and her run have an energy cost, which is shown on a bar that gets eaten away at as you use it. Lastly, her secondary ability, Edge Dancer. This ability's range is honestly really bad, at a measly 3 meters on first impact. But when you get right up on an enemy and use it, it does 35 damage, and by pressing the button again in the same combo, you can pull the enemy back towards you, doing another 35 damage. Additionally, it does stun, and knocks the enemy up. Black Widow's ultimate, Electroplasma Explosion, is a bit weird. Upon use, it pushes you into first person and lets you choose to charge it or cancel it. From the looks of it, the first person zoom has about the same FOV as the scope, just without the PNG. Additionally, there's no trade-off for canceling it. You can maintain your ult charge, so as long as you don't hold to charge it, you're good. The ult is more of a debuff than it is a attack. Without charging it at all, it does a blast of 120 damage. With that 1 second charge, it reaches a max of 170. But it does drop this red plasma, which is what gives the slow of 80%. The plasma lasts 10 seconds after use. It has an energy cost of 2,800. Next is Hawkeye with 250 health. His kit's pretty straightforward. His primary fire has 2 modes, a piercing arrow and a blast arrow. You can swap between them. Both have a charge up time, and the projectile does more damage and moves faster the longer you charge it. While charging though, he does get slowed by 30%, so be careful. On his normal piercing arrow, he does 80 damage on a full charge. But you can actually one-shot a lot of squishies with this, as the headshot multiplier is 2, and the damage increases past this, indicated by a meter that increases after holding the charge for 0.7 seconds and looking over an enemy. Because surprisingly, his default arrow does not one-shot even in the head. His blast arrow, however, only does 20 damage. It is awful. But it does have 3 charges that refresh almost instantly unless you aren't charging them, so it's really good for breaking terrain. His other 2 primary abilities are Hypersonic Arrow and Crescent Slash. His slash does 40 damage on a 15-second cooldown, knocking enemies hit with it into the air, while his Hypersonic Arrow does 2 instances of 50 damage each, on a cooldown of 12 seconds. It also slows enemies by 40% 50% for 1 second. And Hawkeye also has a melee that allows him to deflect attacks shot at him. However, he cannot deflect everything, and the timing on this is very weird. While his jump, Skyward Leap, lets him jump in the direction he's moving for additional airtime. Hawkeye's ultimate is a little bit weird. When used, any enemies that Hawkeye can see will have a hologram created every half of a second. Hawkeye can shoot these, and any damage dealt to the after images is done to the main body. The ult itself lasts 10 seconds, and each after image created lasts 3 seconds. The energy cost is 3,700. On to Hela. She has 275 health, and her main attack, Nightsword Thorn, does 70 base damage with a headshot multiplier of 2, I believe. She can shoot 2 bullets a second with minor falloff that maximizes at 30 meters, but starts at 18. Additionally, her right-click ability allows her to throw 4 daggers that do 10 damage on impact each, but will stick to enemies, doing 30 damage each in the form of AoE explosions. While her primary ability, Soul Drainer, is a throwable projectile that stuns enemies hit with it for about a third of a second. Which doesn't sound like much, but combined with the initial 1 damage and 40 damage dealt from this attack alone, you can use this to quickly finish enemies by hitting a headshot while they are stuck inside of it. Her secondary ability, Astral Flock, lets her transform into a bird and run away in a single line. She becomes invincible and can cancel out of it by pressing the ability button again. Its cooldown is 12 seconds. Because you can cancel out of the bird ability, you can use it to dodge ults quickly and get some surprise damage in. Lastly are her 2 passives. When in the air, Hela can hold her jump keybind to slowly descend, while her second passive creates an explosive AoE bird that does 80 damage upon explosion after 1.8 seconds. Hela's ult is fairly simple. She presses it to launch into the air, becoming a stationary turret that has 1,000 health. You can shoot her out of it, or you can wait it out. She does go into first person and can shoot AoE explosion bursts that do 125 each. She can fire 1.79 bursts a second as well, and the ult itself lasts 10 seconds. The energy cost is 4,000. Quick not so pro tip I learned the hard way though. Be mindful of what map you're on. Structures can stop the ultimate. Hela needs open space above her to fly up. It does actually have a travel path, so even a destructible ceiling can and will stop you from ulting.
Its energy cost is 4,000.
Next, we have Iron Fist, who has 250 health. His primary fire, which is a ranged melee, does 5 hits per cycle, with each hit doing 32 damage. However, the 5th strike does 55. The best way to pull these off is to try to land all 5 hits, because that'll get you the most damage. However, his primary fire is different when you use his right-click ability, which is a slight defense power-up that activates his strengthened primary attack. It also functions as a block, as any damage blocked will convert to health up to 150, and the cooldown is 15 seconds. The strengthened primary does 19 damage per strike at 7 strikes per second. Additionally, his strengthened primary does reduce the cooldowns of his block and strike with every hit, although it's not entirely clear by how much. But as you hit them, you can see it in the bottom, so you can see it for yourself. Next, for his primary abilities, he has a huge lunge kick. Its base damage is 35, and it does more damage on lower health targets, with the max damage of 70 being reached when the target is half health or lower. Although bonus health does not build to this percentage. Additionally, it has a 12-second cooldown. His secondary ability is a 12-second stationary charge ability that regenerates health at a rate of 100 per second. If he uses this past max health, he can get an additional 50 bonus health that does not disappear unless he's hit. The charge lasts 3 seconds, so you could full charge this every time, even from a single HP, and still get the bonus health. Lastly are his 2 movement abilities. He can run on walls, which is what his passive does. When you combine this with his jumps, he has a ton of mobility. He gets 3 jumps, with each one taking 1 second to recharge. However, you do have to be on the ground for the recharging to start. You cannot get the recharge while in the air. Iron Fist's ult looks confusing, but it's pretty simple. His melee range is doubled, and he gets a 30% damage boost, with a 20% movement boost, while also getting an 80% cooldown reduction on his punches and his blocks. Additionally, when using the ultimate, it recharges Dragon's Defense, which is his block and health converter. So if you use it, then ult, you get it back and can use it again. And because the 80% cooldown reduction is there, the usual 15-second cooldown is instead 3 seconds. That's why this dude feels so hard to kill on his ult. Additionally, he can use the rest of his kit like normal with some slightly buffed stats. It lasts 12 seconds. The energy cost isn't actually mentioned on the website, so we'll say it's at least like 7. After Iron Fist, we have Iron Man, who has 250 health. His kit is mainly made up of his weapon with some other damage abilities alongside it. His base weapon does 55 damage per blast, with the third blast firing twice at once. So it's pretty much a right hook, left hook, double hook. Upon impact, the weapons create small splash explosions that also do 35 damage alongside the initial 55. On the two-hand repulsors, the damage is slightly increased, with the impact doing 65 and the splash doing 40 instead. While his secondary attack is his Uni-Beam, which does 120 damage per second. The only trade-off is that he becomes extremely immobile. His Missile Barrage, which fires 16 missiles and does 20 damage per round, has an 8-second cooldown, while his secondary ability, Hypervelocity, allows him to fly. It consumes energy, and you can't fly forever. The weird part, though, is that you can only fire those missiles if you are flying forward, which is kind of weird. But let's switch it up a bit and cover his Stealth Boost, Armor Overdrive. For 10 seconds, Iron Man becomes enhanced, and during this time, both his primary fire and his Unibeam do more damage, and he can use his missiles without having to fly. For example, his Hypervelocity does not consume energy, meaning he can fly forever while this timer is up. The only difference with his missiles, however, is that Iron Man gets 20 missiles instead of 16. Overall, his kit's really confusing, so I'll sum it up for you. Overdrive gives you more damage and more flight. That's pretty much it. Iron Man's ultimate is simple. Pressing it blasts out a giant pulse blast. That's pretty much it. He's immobile while using it, and it has a massive AoE that can one-shot a lot of people. It does 300 damage a second to anything in its path additionally, and 1000 damage at the actual impact explosion site. The ultimate cost is 2800. Next, with Magik. Her base health is 250. Her main attack does 65 and an AoE swing. It does less damage the further you are from it. She can attack every 0.83 seconds as well. Her right click, however, lets her throw a projectile after charging it. At minimum charge, it can do 45, but at maximum can do 90. Her two main abilities are her dash, which knocks enemies into the air when used. It does 85 damage with an 8-second cooldown. While her second ability is her stepping disc, which let her teleport. While teleporting, she's invincible to damage entirely. Additionally, for 3 seconds after she's out of the portal, she has the option to activate one of her two other abilities that pair with the discs. The first one being an AoE slash similar to her sword attack that does 45 damage, or she can spawn a 100 health demon that does 20 damage per hit at 4 hits a second. And lastly, her passive, which converts 30% of any damage done to other people into bonus health. So, the more damage she does, the more health she gets. However, it does max out at 150, but can still replenish as it's damaged. Magik's ult is bare bones. Put pretty simply, she just gets a stronger form of her base one, turning her into like a half demon or something. So I'll just say the damage and any new effects that happen to the rest of her abilities. Her E ability, which is a sword slice that slashes enemies upwards, does 115 instead of 85, while her whirl does 3 hits of 35 over 0.75 seconds instead of a single hit of 45. Her range charge slash does 90 at minimum and 180 at max instead of the previous 45 and 90. Her little demon has 200 health instead of 100 and does 25 damage 4 times a second instead of 20 damage 4 times per second. Next is Moon Knight. Moon Knight has a base health of 250, and his primary fire is a crescent dart, which does 3 projectiles that can bounce between enemies. The base damage is 25 per round for 75 total. They can headshot, however, and he can shoot once every 0.57 seconds. Lastly, for his projectile, there is a fall off starting at 30 meters, having his damage by 50. His secondary fire, which is his right click, is very similar. It has a 6-second cooldown and bounces between enemies. However, it does 80 damage on a single projectile. Before covering his main abilities, though, let's quickly talk about his movement. Moon Knight can glide by holding his left shift and travels at about 9 meters per second. If you combine both of these with his primary ability, which grapples to a nearby structure and pulls him into the air, you can get way more airtime. The glider does not have a cooldown, but the jump has a 6-second cooldown, and the grapple has a 15-second one. Next, we have his primary abilities, like his bouncing projectiles. His Ancient Ankh is an ability that can bounce projectiles, similar to that of hitting an enemy. However, by shooting it directly in the middle, it will throw the projectiles at the nearest person closest to the Ankh, and will still get the bounce effect. However, it is a destructible, so placing them in doorways or behind walls where they're hard to hit is best. By the time they notice it's there, you can do a ton of damage. Additionally, the Ankh itself is a throwable that can launch people in its proximity up into the air while doing 20 damage. It has a 12-second cooldown. And lastly is his melee, which, similar to Groot, can do a 3 combo that knocks up on the 3rd hit. Next is Moon Knight's ult, Hand of Khonshu, which is an AoE field that launches a ton of hands from a portal in the sky. Each one does 75 and it hits 4 per second. This applies to everyone in the AoE, so everyone standing in the AoE will get 4 hits per second for 75 each. The duration is 3 seconds and the energy cost is 2800. Be careful when using this, however, as it's not instant. There's a 1.5 second charge up time. Place it where you think people will walk, not where they already are unless you don't think they're going to move much. Namor has a base health of 275. His main main weapon, which is his trident, does 70 damage per hit and can critical hit. The attack speed is somewhat slow at 1.09 rounds per second. However, it has special effects for the rest of his kit, so the trade-off is worth it. Additionally, his right click launches his trident, which does 40 damage and has a 60 damage AoE. His first primary ability, Aquatic Dominion, spawns a destructible turret squid called a Monstro Spawn. They have 100 health and a 40 meter attack range, doing 17 damage twice per second. There is a fall off at 20 meters, which maxes out at 30% of the cap damage by 40 meters. So never place these past 20 meters if you can. The ability itself has a roughly 12.5 second recharge time per turret. As mentioned earlier, his weapon does recharge the cooldown for Aquatic Dominion. Additionally, critical hitting an enemy will allow the turrets to shoot much faster, pushing the damage down to 11 per hit, but instead allowing them to shoot 5 times per second. The enhanced duration lasts 2. Lastly is his left shift ability, which allows him to become invulnerable for 3 seconds and the ability to float into the air on a 15-second cooldown. Next is Namor's ult, Horde of Proteus, which does damage in an AoE field signified by a circle similar to Moon Knight's ult. The closer you are to the center, the more damage that it does, with 500 being the max in the center and 200 being on the outer. The hit delay is 1.5 seconds from the time it's casted, and when you do get hit, it will immobilize you for 1.5 seconds. The energy cost is 3100. Next is Psylocke, who has a base health of 250. Her main attack is a crossbow that reduces the cooldowns on all of her other abilities, although the critical damage is specified to be 150% exactly on the official website. Her fall off starts at 15 meters and maxes out at 60% of the max damage by 30, while her secondary, Winged Shurikens, fires a volley of projectiles. This one's a little confusing, so I'll dumb it down. When firing, she shoots 5 projectiles that do damage and grant her bonus health when recalling them. When recalled, they will come back to her crosshair. Each projectile you land gives you 10 bonus health. Next are her primary abilities, which do receive the cooldown reductions mentioned before. Her first one is her Psyblade Dash. It does 50 damage and has a max range of 12 meters for its initial dash. It has 2 charges that recharge after an 8-second cooldown. Additionally, when you use this ability, if you've thrown your Winged Shurikens, this ability will automatically recall them. However, it follows the path you dashed in, so it will actually try to travel where you started the dash and end where you ended the dash. So if you're ever facing a Psylocke, be ready to step to the side to dodge additional damage. Lastly is her invisibility, which, well, lets her go invisible. It lasts for 3 seconds, gives her a 50% movement boost, and the cooldown is 15 seconds. If she's attacked while in stealth, she keeps it, but she will become visible for a very brief period of time. Psylocke's ult, Dance the Butterfly, is pretty simple. It's an AoE attack that locks onto enemies, doing 150 damage per hit 2 times a second. It lasts for 4 seconds. With that said, it has a 20 meter radius and energy cost of 2800. Next is Scarlet Witch, who has a base health of 250. Her main weapon, Chaos Control, is a beam type weapon that does 5 base damage per tick and 0.5% of the health additionally. This makes targets with more health take more damage, and additionally, she can fire this 10 times per second. And because of this, it makes you think that it's better than damage tanks, but at the same time, because their health is more, the damage she does likely won't even scratch tanks. So you're better off pressuring squishies. Additionally, doing damage with this primary fire charges her right click ability, Chthonian Burst. This ability, when used, fires an explosive projectile magic missile that does 30 damage and 35 AoE. Scarlet's primary abilities are Mystic Projection and Dark Seal. Her Mystic Projection allows her to run away similar to Hela's bird ability. However, Scarlet gets 2 of them and they take 8 seconds to recharge. Additionally, you can move around freely, unlike Hela. You can also combo them one after another for more height, although it's probably not very smart, as it's your only way to escape. While her Dark Seal allows her to throw a field that detonates by either pressing the keybind to use it or detonates when it hits something. Anyone inside the sphere receives a half a second stun, and the sphere detects players every 1.25 seconds. The cooldown is 12 seconds, with her last movement ability being Telekinesis, which lets her fall slowly. Scarlet Witch's ultimate, Reality Razor, is an explosion AoE similar to Iron Man's bomb. However, it does 700 damage, and she is the bomb. Because of this, when she activates it, she begins to heavily slow down up to 35%, and she can be killed out of it. So, doing it out in the open is not good. Popping it behind cover, waiting a couple seconds, then coming out is best. Additionally, there is no fall off. Anyone in the 15 meter range will take 750 damage. The charge up time is 4 seconds. Also, for some reason, the website doesn't really specify the energy costs. So, it costs at least 3 or something. And oh boy, here is the poster child of this video game. We have Spider-Man, who has a base health of 250. His main attacks are his punches. However, after landing 2 punches, the third hit will be a kick. The punches do 25 each, while the kick does 40. In total, you can get about 90 damage from one combo. His right click, however, is a web cluster that has 5 charges and does 30 damage on impact. The charges take 3 seconds each to recharge, which is indicated by the symbols below his crosshair. Additionally, anyone hit with the webs will have an icon appear above their head. When they have this icon, any attacks done do an additional 45 damage. So you always want to try and use this on an enemy before initiating. It'll make it so much easier to kill enemies. However, he has even more abilities that you can use to combo, so pay attention. His 2 primary abilities are Get Over Here and Amazing Combo. Get Over Here is a grab ability that will pull enemies towards him, similar to Winter Soldier's hook. However, it does 25 damage and has a max range of 20 meters. Additionally, if the enemy is marked with a spider cluster, instead of pulling them to you, Spider-Man will pull himself to them. So if you're away from an enemy and want to get in close fast, mark the enemy first and initiate with this ability to get instant damage. Then once you follow up with this hit combo mentioned before, you will almost entirely kill most supports in the game. His last movement or passive ability, Web Sling, allows him to do that Spider-Man thing where he swings on a web. Yep, that's it. And it has 3 charges and takes 6 seconds per charge. Additionally, please turn Easy Swing off. The AI for this is horrible and you will hit walls and die. It's harder to match the swing with it off, but trust me, it's way better this way, as you can actually control it. Next, there is 2 jump abilities, both bound to his jump keybind. Flip and Flip, which lets him double jump only after landing, and Wall Crawl, which lets him do another one of those Spider-Man things, with this last Spider-Man thing being Spider Sense. Not sure if this triggers on invisible enemies, but if it does, that's low-key busted. Spider-Man's ultimate, Spectacular Spin, is just an AoE rapid fire that lasts for 2.4 seconds, shooting webs in the area. It does about 12.5 hits per second with 12 damage per hit. Additionally, it gives you 250 bonus health, and every web hit slows the enemy by 3%. If you land 20 hits on an enemy, it will stun them. The stun lasts 1.5 seconds, and the energy cost is 2,800. Squirrel Girl has a base health of 275. Her primary fire is a burst acorn that has an AoE damage of 110, while her right click is a stun ability that roots enemies hit with it in place for 1.33 seconds on an 8-second cooldown. Since it does a lot of damage per hit, you want to look for weak targets, as this will be the most effective way to secure kills. While her 2 primary abilities are Tail Bounce and Mammal Bond. Tail Bounce lets her jump upwards with her tail, while Mammal Bond lets her use one ability without consuming a cooldown. By doing this, if you use an ability while it's active, the ability will not be consumed and you can use that ability again. Your best bet is to pop this ability, use the Squirrel Stun, and then use it again, as you pretty much get free kills. Squirrel Girl's unbeatable Squirrel Tsunami is pretty weird. It's just a stampede of squirrels that lasts 10 seconds and can do 150 damage each. But for some reason, a lot of people don't actually know this. They have 600 health. Additionally, the squirrels run about 2.5 times faster than most characters. So don't run, step to the side. The energy cost is 2,800. Next is Starlord. Starlord has a base health of 250, with his main weapon, Element Guns, doing 6.5 damage per bullet, and it can critical hit, so it rewards for good aim and shoots 40 rounds per second, while his right click Stellar Shift instantly reloads his gun. So if you shoot all of your bullets, you can instantly reload your gun without the animation. The best way to use this is to burst down an enemy, instant reload, and try to finish with the second clip. Each charge has a 5-second recharge time, and you have 2 charges. Additionally, while in the shift animation, you are invincible to everything. If you time this properly, you can dodge one-shots and ultimates. His primary abilities allows him to fly forward, consuming an energy bar, which is indicated. If you use the entire bar, it would take 12 seconds to replenish. The best use for this is to run away or get to high ground. And lastly, his Blaster Barrage, which is an AoE rapid fire ability that slightly restricts his movement, but does about 80 damage per second on an 8-second cooldown. The actual damage numbers are 8 damage every 10th of a second, so this is great for finishing low HP enemies that are often grouped up. Starlord's ult, Galactic Legend, is simple. It's pretty much aimbot. You cannot miss unless you look away. There is fall off past 25 meters, which caps at 40 meters for 60%. So the closer, the better. You get a 20% movement boost while in this ult, and your reload time is reduced by 70%. The maximum locking distance is 30 meters, with the energy cost being 3,100. Storm has a base health of 250. And her main attack, Windblade, does 50 damage, and it can pierce through enemies. It cannot critical hit and fires 2 shots per second. Storm's primary use, although it's not very good right now, is her ability to speed up her allies or give them a damage boost with her weather control ability. She can boost her own speed while in wind mode by 15% and her allies by 8, while the damage boost is 16% for herself and 8 for allies. While Storm's next ability is Goddess Boost, which put pretty simply increases the power of her buffs that she gives allies and herself. While she is boosted, it lasts 8 seconds and changes her movement movement boost to 40% and her allies to 20. While the damage boost is 30 for herself and 12 for allies. Also, she does get enhanced thunder for 2 seconds per strike with a damage of 35.
Storm's ult, Omega Hurricane, is pretty unique, honestly. She turns herself into a tornado. There's a 5-second selection duration, and the actual tornado lasts 5 seconds. It has 2 ticks per second, and each tick does 75 damage. So pretty much 150 damage per second. Additionally, she gets 350 bonus health, and her normal damage and speed boosting is off while in the ult. Its energy cost is 3100.
Next is Punisher, who has a base health of 275. He has 2 main weapons, those being a rapid-fire rifle and a close-range shotgun. His rifle does 18 damage per bullet and fires 10 rounds per second. It can headshot, and its fall-off starts at 20 meters. His shotgun, however, does 10 damage per round, and it fires 14 rounds at a time. He can shoot about 1.5 times per second, with it also having the ability to headshot, although it's a little bit harder because of the spread. His right-click while he has rifle equipped does 45 damage, creating a smoke screen and allows him to see the enemy through it. Although this isn't the ability, it's actually his passive, but I'll get to that. His primary abilities are pretty simple. He has a zipline that he can throw out and can use it whenever he wants. It also stays for a while, so if he places one at the spawn and dies, he can use it again when he respawns. Its cooldown is 20 seconds. While his other primary ability, his turret, is a placeable turret that he can sit in. It has 12 damage per round, shooting 12.5 rounds per second, and has a total health of 600 with a cooldown of 20 seconds. And lastly, his passive, which lets him see enemies that disappear from his sight for a small window of time. This is what lets him see enemies through his smokescreen. A quick tip that could be pretty useful is to quickly hide behind cover, use the silhouette of your enemy to know when to poke back out to win 1v1s. The Punisher's ultimate, Final Judgment, is extremely powerful. His Gatling guns shoot 33.33 rounds per second and do 8 damage each. This makes the burst potential for good aim insanely powerful. He can burst through Luna Snow's ult with ease, even without headshotting. Additionally, in this state, he can make volleys of missiles that do 50 damage and shoots every 3 seconds. Put simply, he's just a walking DPS machine only meant to burn through hell. He can kill most tanks in 1 second like this. His energy cost is 3400. Winter Soldier has a base health of 250, and his main weapon is a pistol that has projectile travel time, and it is not hit scan. The gun fires 2.5 rounds per second and has 3 ammo. It can headshot, although a lot of his other abilities reload his gun, so keep this in mind. His right click, Bionic Hook, lets him charge it up and pull enemies into him. You can charge it for half a second, all the way up to 4, but the actual max charge is after 1 second of charging it. Additionally, it does 15 damage with a 20 damage AoE and has an 8-second cooldown. His 2 primary abilities, Tainted Voltage and Trooper's Fist, are both his primary finish abilities. Tainted Voltage specifically is a projectile slow that does 55 damage, slows the enemy for 35%, and has a 6-second cooldown. It goes through enemies, so if you fire this into a group, it will hit anyone within its radius. While his other ability, Trooper's Fist, is a dash ability that does damage upon impact. It does 25 at first, then an additional 65 on the second hit. It's great to get quick burst, and it's on a 12-second cooldown. And lastly is his passive, which gives him 30 bonus health when he uses Bionic Hook or Tainted Voltage. Additionally, it also reloads his gun, which is very important for finishing kills as well. Also, the bonus health in his ult is different, giving him 50 instead of the base 30. Winter Soldier's ult, Kraken Impact, sends him into the air, where he can see a visible field of impact. The base damage is 100, but he can one-shot some enemies if their health falls below a certain threshold, which is 20%. He has 5 seconds between culling windows, which is what his instant kill is. But he has 8 seconds to hit another Kraken Impact after culling, as culling an enemy will refresh the ultimate. Even if the impact does not kill the enemy, as long as he kills them within the 5 seconds of the impact, he can still get the kill to refresh the ult. If timed properly, this could theoretically be infinite. The energy cost is 3100. And last on our abilities list is Wolverine, who has a base health of 300, and his main attack, Savage Claw, is a melee that does 15 damage per strike, but it's similar to Scarlet Witch. He also does percentage-based damage, doing 1.5% of the max health of an enemy. Additionally, he does slightly more damage for each point of rage he's built, signified by both the meter and the red glow that appears around him when used. At max charge, he'll glow red, and his hair will change. This is noticeable by both teams. If he's at maximum range, he can do an additional 4.5% per strike, making the maximum he can do 15 plus 6%. This makes him extremely effective at tank busting. Also, quick fun fact, all of his abilities do percent-based damage on his rage, so using most of these with higher rage will get you the most value. While his right click, Vicious Rampage, is a dash attack that does 15 damage per strike. As far as I know, there's 2 strikes as aiming it at the ground shows 2 lines, which means this attack is best used at 100 rage since it
also gets the percentage bonus. His two main abilities, Undying Animal and Feral Leap, are somewhat similar. His leap is a bit confusing though, so here's all you need to know. You get an initial hit and a hit upon landing. Both do base damage and have percentage damage as well. But since you can pick up enemies and fly with them, you can use this to kamikaze enemies off the map with yourself, which is a very popular strategy in high elo, where players will often trade their life for a tank's. It has a 12-second cooldown. Additionally, his Feral Leap allows you to enter a temporary rage state that seems to be separate from his normal rage meter, however. His secondary, Undying Animal, is a pretty simple 5-second duration that reduces the damage he takes by 50%. It has a 16-second cooldown. And lastly are his two passives, Berserker Rage, which builds the rage meter and boosts the healing he receives from his next passive, Regenerative Healing Factor. It's a bit confusing, so I'll simplify it. It's a 1 HP life save. It will generate bonus health. Any bonus health converts into HP after 3 seconds, and it has a 90-second cooldown. However, every single KO you get, which is essentially any kills done by you or your team, will reduce it by 10 seconds. With his ultimate Last Stand, which knocks enemies forward and airborne. Similar to his normal dash, there's a starting impact and a landing impact for 2 hits, with each one doing 50. There is a percentage damage that stacks, giving it damage equal to 10% of the target's max health, with an extra 0.3% damage for each point of rage. The energy cost is not listed, so at least 5.
Well, that should have you covered on all of the abilities. If you want more videos like this, smash like. If we can get 1,000 likes, we'll make more informative guides like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.